Welcome to the Smart Sound Plymouth webinar. My name is Dr. James Fishwick. I'm head of Smart Sound Plymouth. And in way of a brief introduction, I work at Plymouth Marine Laboratory. I've worked there now for over 20 years. I started as a bioptical oceanographer, so studying the biologies of the ocean using optical properties. But I've always had a keen interest in the Western Channel Observatory, and particularly in sensors, sensor technologies and sensor developments, lately into autonomy as well. Over the last 10 years, I've been in charge of PML's Data Buoy project, managing the two large scientific data buoys we have on the Western Channel Observatory. And through that project, it's given me an awful lot of experience of working with SMEs and academia in the development and validation of new technologies, particularly scientific sensing technologies. What is Smart Sound Plymouth? Well, Smart Sound Plymouth is Britain's platform for marine innovative technology development. You'll see on this slide that there's a chart. The blue area marked on the chart is the area of Smart Sound Plymouth. And this area was selected when working with local authorities, water users, the Navy, and other partners on Smart Sound to identify really the most appropriate places, the places that would facilitate all the different requirements of the users. And therefore we've got over 1,000 square kilometres. It's authorised and deconflicted, so each mission will be authorised through the relevant authorities, and deconflicted we have an email address, group address of over 50 organisations and water users within this water space, all keen to understand what missions are being conducted and when, so that they can deconflict and avoid those areas where possible. So this area provides us with a diverse environment. We can operate within sheltered, shallow water bays, right out to the extents of the Smart Sound in up to 80 metres of water, and exposing kit and technology to a very hostile environment out there. So the 80 metres of water is ideal. It really provides a great facility to develop and trial underwater technologies, particularly autonomous platforms. The Smart Sound Plymouth is heavily instrumented. I'll move on to this in more detail as we progress through the presentation, but as part of that instrumentation, it also provides multiple assets, multiple platforms for validation and trials of various marine technologies. And surrounding all this is a professional team. Across the collaboration of Smart Sound Plymouth, we offer a very professional team with countless years of experience in the marine industry, operating, developing and validating prototype technologies. And part of that team, part of what we offer, is a very responsible industry. All our missions will be conducted in accordance with the Marine Autonomous Systems Regulatory Working Group Code of Practice. All our paperwork, all our authorization processes are in alignment with that document. And then finally, and very key to this slide, is accessibility. So the Smart Sound Plymouth is very accessible to everybody. It's accessible in the sense that through the Marine Business Technology Centre, we can provide free access to the Smart Sound, providing that you are an eligible SME. So I really just encourage anybody who has an interest in the Smart Sound to get in touch, and we can have those discussions about how we can facilitate those trials, hopefully for free of charge. Secondly, we're accessible in the sense that it's very local to the coast. Even at the extent of the Smart Sound, we're less than 20 miles from Plymouth. We can get out, we can get hold of whatever technology you're trialing. If it's out on a buoy, for example, we can get to that buoy very quickly. We can access that sensor, we can bring it back, we can recalibrate it, we can clean it, we can retweak the software, whatever needs doing. So it's much more accessible than putting something on a platform that you may not see for 12, 18 months. And this is quite important, obviously, with prototype development. And also it's accessible in the sense that when an organisation comes to use Smart Sound, we don't expect you to come with years of experience of deploying equipment in the marine environment. We will walk you through that whole process. We can help you take your prototype, we can marinize it, we can ruggedize it, we can develop a mission plan, a most appropriate way to validate that piece of marine technology, and then we can help you with that mission, and we can deploy and we can walk you through that whole process. So moving on now as to what puts the smart into Smart Sound. Clearly, what puts Smart into Smart Sound is the marine technologies, the prototypes, the equipment that we're trialing and developing on the cutting edge of marine technology. That is clearly a Smart in Smart Sound, but also it's more than that. Smart into Smart Sound is the Western Channel Observatory. It's our understanding of that environment and our continuous monitoring and the validation sensors and platforms that we operate. You'll see in the chart on the left of your screen the Smart Sound Plymouth, the Western Channel Observatory stations. The station names L4 and E1. We have two large data buoys on these stations. They operate hourly data sets coming back, transmitted to the lab. They are put on the website live. That data is also fed into the Met Office for weather forecasting and sea state forecasting modelling. Also, in addition to these stations, we have a Penley Point Atmospheric Observatory, and you'll see a few other yellow dots, particularly in Plymouth Sound, with long-term monitoring stations there as well. In addition to the buoy platforms, we also visit these stations on a weekly basis with our research vessel. The charts you can see in the middle of the screen are an annual cycle of our data sets which are compiled through our weekly visits to the stations. The particular one in the middle is the L4 station. As well as our vast understanding of the water mass, the in situ, the field sampling that goes on. This is backed up by really international leading groups within PML. So the remote sensing group, you can see in the top of your screen a remote sensing image of the Southwest Peninsula. This is just to highlight the data sets that can be available. The remote sensing group at PML are now working very closely with the Smart Sound Plymouth partners to identify what products can be made available, the resolutions that may be required, and really identifying how they can develop a package of remote sensing parameters for the Smart Sound Plymouth. Moving on, in addition to the remote sensing and the in situ is our ecosystem modelling group. This group develops a variety of models. The particular model that's on display in this slide is the FVCOM model, and this is an unstructured grid model. You can see in the left-hand corner the chart of sort of Plymouth and the western approaches and the triangular grid that's laid over that. The great thing about this model is you can collapse that grid so you can build up the resolution of the model around interesting features, so you can end up with a resolution of 30 meters and then expand that grid where there's less interesting features, and you can have a resolution up to about 8 kilometers here. This model comes right up to the Tamar, a very sophisticated model, great for showing the hydrodynamics of the ecosystem, but also tracking particles, temperature. A whole host of scientific variables can be tracked through this model. The modelling group at PML and the remote sensing group at PML also utilise PML's high-performance computing systems. We have 3 particular systems at PML. We have a high-throughput computing system. This gives over 1,000 cores and 5 terabytes of RAM. A high-performance computing cluster with over 720 cores. And the latest addition to our computing at PML is a £1 million investment in a GPU cluster. This cluster has cores 100 times more than the average gaming PC and operates at 50% of that power. So it's a very sophisticated GPU cluster, and it's really identified and will be utilised to develop PML's artificial intelligence and machine learning work. The modelling effort will come into a bit more detail later on, and I'll put it into context as why it's quite critical to Smart Sound and what we're trying to achieve here on the Smart Sound. So you'll see on this slide there's a variety of platforms that are available on Smart Sound Plymouth. These are made available through the core team, which is the Plymouth City Council, Plymouth Marine Laboratory, the Marine Biological Association, and the Universities of Plymouth and Exeter. So you'll see there's a variety of research vessels on this slide. These vessels vary in size and capability. There's also autonomous surface vessels, buoy systems, ROVs, and as part of the research vessels we also have underway flow-through sensor capability and also profiling platforms. So I just wanted to highlight one of the research vessels that's available on Smart Sound Plymouth. This is the Plymouth Quest. It's a highly capable vessel. It has significant lifting and handling capabilities. It deploys and maintains all the moorings on the Western Channel Observatory. This vessel also has quite a sophisticated seawater system. We have a tube that protrudes on 1 meter below the hull. The reason for this is that we then are bringing pristine seawater onto the vessel. We're not sucking in the bow wave, the water that's passing down the hull. So this provides water to 10 tonnes of storage, so we can return with 10 tonnes of pristine seawater. PML uses that water, for example, in our mesocosm experiments and our seawater halls. In addition to that, we have a flow-through system. So in the bottom right-hand corner of the slide, you can see a sensor flow-through system. This is quite sophisticated, water flowing through this system to collect information on seawater temperature, salinity, dissolved oxygen, the chlorophyll, the turbidity, the absorbance, and the coloured dissolved organic material that's in that seawater. As well as water sensing, we also have meteorological station and light measurements that are integrated into this package. But one of the significant features of this package is it's flexible. We have the ability to build on this package, and we have quite a large uptake now of organisations using this system to build in their prototype sensors, and that allows you to have a much more hands-on interaction with your sensor whilst you're trialling and developing it. So ideal for very early stage prototyping. And also in the bottom left-hand corner, we have a profiling system that we can put electronic devices on, and also collect seawater through the water column that we can use to validate those measurements. So one of the new assets that has recently been delivered to the Smart Sound Plymouth, and this is procured through the University of Plymouth, working on the Marine Business Technology Centre. So this is the USV Cetus. It's a Seaworker 4 provided by L3 Harris, a very capable unmanned surface vessel. This particular vessel has 60 hours mission duration. It has wet and dry sensor payload bays, so if your sensor needs to sit in seawater, they can accommodate that. But also if your sensor needs dry electronics, then that can be housed within this vessel. Various other capability to mount your sensors. It has underwater retractable masts, also has a water column sensor winch. And another key feature of this vessel is the robot operating system interface. So this vessel comes with very sophisticated and proven autonomous control technology. But one of the features that is offered is this interface with a robotic operating system. So it allows third parties to plug in and explore new software to develop and advance autonomous control. So it's about testing new algorithms, new ways of operating in an autonomous manner. And this vessel comes with mission and engineering support, right through from how to mount your sensor into the vessel, into interfacing that electronically into the vessel, and then operating the mission that will prove your technology. Also available on Smart Sound are autonomous buoy platforms. There are 2 platforms that are available on Smart Sound, and they are moored on the stations L4 and E1. L4 is a coastal station, whereas E1 is a more offshore station, which is on the extents of the Smart Sound. These buoy platforms provide high-speed communications. Both have very comprehensive sensor suites, novel anti-fouling technology, critically as well, they have analog and digital port connectivity with onboard PCs, and they are also powered through renewable energy. That's quite a nice feature, that out trialing and testing, collecting what is very important scientific information as well, is all done in a renewable and green way. So a new development on Smart Sound, which has been procured by Plymouth Marine Laboratory. This is a new platform, a new buoy platform, which will be deployed on our L4 station. This platform has a major investment of around £400,000 and will be delivered to PML within the next month, in July of 2020. This provides us with a much significant capability in what we can offer. This buoy is a much bigger platform to what we've operated previously. The float is a diameter of just under 4 meters. The tower, the superstructure, you can comfortably stand 3 or 4 people within that. But the significant game changers here are that this has an autonomous profiling capability. So the existing buoy platforms only measure data on the surface. This buoy will have the ability to profile sensor platforms through the water column, and that's completely configurable, speeds, stopping, starting, and depth. And also it's not a closed system. This system allows us to interface new sensors and quite a comprehensive package onto that profiling platform. Also, the buoy has significant power availability. Power is usually an issue on a buoy platform, and this buoy, because of the size of it, has facilitated a very significant power package. We have over 1,000 ampere hours of battery capacity, and they are charged through 800 watt solar panels and two 400 watt wind turbines. Measurements that will be made as routine on this buoy are the Met station, which will be provided through the Met office. We will also be measuring light levels on the surface, so looking at the sunlight intensity. This buoy will have a wave sensor, so we'll be able to understand the directional waves that we'll be operating and will be subjected to at this station. In water measurements will be temperature, salinity, sound velocity, which is a key that we've been asked to deliver through some of our partners. We're interested in how the sound passes through the water, so that's key to underwater acoustics and underwater communications. Also, we'll be measuring dissolved oxygen, chlorophyll A, CDOM, turbidity, nutrients and pH levels, and these all are monitored on an hourly basis, and that data is transmitted through high-speed communication system. And that high-speed communication system is also quite key to the offer here, because any third party that wishes to develop and trial a prototype sensor on this platform will have the ability to plug that into an embedded PC on the platform, and then through that high-speed communications we will be able to enable a sort of a remote desktop kind of scenario, so that you'll be able to log on, see what your sensor's doing, make changes, modify it, see how it's performing, and in a very robust way. And the sensor package will be deployed on the buoy at the L4 station, so within half an hour of leaving Plymouth we can be on that platform to make any physical changes or physical alterations to that sensor. So a very capable platform, real game changer in what we're offering on Smart Sound, and we're looking forward to having that in Plymouth and deployed in the next few months. So this is the unmanned surface vessel, the Autonaut. This is a vessel that Smart Sound Plymouth are actively seeking to procure in the next 6 to 12 months, very complementary to the offer of the USV Cetus. The particular advantages of the Autonaut is much more in the sense of long endurance missions. The Autonaut will be very comfortable operating on the Smart Sound for weeks and months at a time, and this allows us to test and develop prototype sensors and to really see how they'll perform over a much longer endurance missions, how they'll respond to biofouling issues and sensor degradation. It has a large sensor payload bay. The vessel that we'll be procuring is a 5-meter vessel. It has high-speed communications and plenty of payload bay for all kinds of sensor development and sensor integrations. And again, this vessel will be supported with a very professional team. So we've talked about some of the assets, we've talked about the natural environment of Smart Sound, but also in addition to that is the critical mass of organisations operating and part of Smart Sound Plymouth. Particularly the Future Autonomous at Sea Technologies, the FAST cluster. This is a cluster of some 30 or more now organisations, all operating at the forefront of the industry in autonomous platforms, advanced power systems, environmental sensing systems and control systems, right through to end users and systems of systems integrators. This is a fantastic collaborative group, all keen to work together, starting to move forward now, seeking proposals for larger collaborative funded projects. In addition to the sort of the collaborative nature and the funding processes, also they offer additional platforms, additional capability onto the Smart Sound, and also very supportive in the guidance of how we move forward and how we manage Smart Sound. So how we build Smart Sound to be a platform that is really useful to the industry, that has the facilities and the infrastructure that is required to develop and advanced marine technologies. Also, the FAST cluster are quite key to the Marine Tech Expo. The Marine Tech Expo was supposed to be happening in Plymouth in early July 2020. This would have been a very significant expo celebrating the Mayflower 400 year. So unfortunately, due to the current situation, that has been postponed. I would strongly urge you to keep an eye on the Marine Tech Expo website to see when the new dates are released in 2021. But the Expo offered conferencing, also exhibition space, but really a key sort of differentiator to what we were doing here in Plymouth was the offer of in-water demonstrations. So delegates will have the opportunity to board a vessel and come out onto the Smart Sound to see some really cutting-edge, industry-leading missions being demonstrated. You can see we had quite a significant partnership. We've got a big offer here, L3 Harris, unmanned survey vessels, Autonaut, Thales, EcoSub Robotics are joining us, X-Ocean from Ireland are coming and exhibiting. So some real key industry leading partners here will all be available, all demonstrating their equipment. So there'll be a great expo, and encourage you to attend that when it happens in 2021. So we've just talked about the FAST cluster, which is geographically based in Plymouth. The organisations don't necessarily all reside in Plymouth, but they are keen and are part of the work within Plymouth. So how does Smart Sound Plymouth integrate into the more regional strengths? So we're doing that through the Maritime UK Southwest. I particularly am chair of the Autonomy and Geospatial Data Expert Group within Maritime UK Southwest. And part of the remit within that group is really building those collaborations across the Southwest, building the strength and having a very significant offer as a region. Part of that process is about the integration of the various test facilities, so Smart Sound Plymouth, the Portland test facility and Falmouth Bay test site, all very different offers and all very unique in their own way, but collaboratively and together a very strong offer to business and development. Part of the work, we're also developing marketing materials. You can see in the centre of the screen some examples of some pages taken from a more recent handout. This really just brings together and reinforces the significance really of the critical mass of organisations, academia, and also the test facilities that are available within the Southwest region. Smart Sound moving forward nationally, we're in talks with national projects, not only marine projects but also terrestrial and aerial projects, really trying to explore how we can collaborate, how we can build on our strengths, and how we can utilise experiences from different markets, different environments. Talking with organisations again, you may have noticed on the FAST cluster slide the UK Hydrographic Office are part of that. The Met Office offer the meteorological information from Smart Sound Plymouth, and also going forward in the next few months we would hope to be able to announce some more key organisations, national organisations moving down to Plymouth and being part of what's going on with Smart Sound. Also, in addition, we've done a lot of work over the last 6 months with building our reputation within government, particularly focusing on the Department for Transport. We really hope within the next few months we'll be able to make some significant announcements around that activity. And then internationally, we attend trade shows internationally, build our profile as best we can with our European and international partners. Also through the Department for International Trade, we are currently seeking funding through a high potential opportunity, which will allow us to develop further marketing material, but then utilise the international links through the Department of International Trade to really sell Smart Sound Plymouth, but also the region through Maritime UK Southwest. So moving on now to some more recent developments. We have been very successful recently in securing a large amount of funding for an advanced communications system. This is great. This will be procured in the near future. It's something that has been identified by users for a year or so now as something that limits Smart Sound Plymouth. So it's a great step forward for us. We've been trying very hard over the last 12 months to fund this particular platform. So there'll be two aspects to this funding. The initial aspect will be to deploy an advanced military-grade mesh network. This will be a very highly capable, high-speed communications network, which will integrate not only the static but also the mobile assets that are deployed on the Smart Sound Plymouth. Also, we will have modems that will be available for aerial drones. This is something we're hoping to explore, a way we're hoping to move forward in the future, being able to deploy missions with aerial drones, surface vessels and subsurface vessels. So having a comms network which can bring those together is a real game changer for Smart Sound Plymouth. And the next phase of that development is the 5G marine demonstrator. So we have funding now to deploy a 5G marine demonstrator package within the Port of Plymouth. This will be deployed within the next sort of 6 to 12 months. So we've talked about the advanced communication system, and moving forward, that what that really will enable is this digital twin, the mirroring of the real world in the virtual environment. So we've been doing a lot of work over the last 6 to 12 months in talking to various potential users of a digital twin, trying to really understand what a digital twin would look like for Smart Sound Plymouth, how it could be developed so it could potentially feed into multiple use cases and have a wide arching use for the industry. Through that we've not only talked to users, but we've also talked to other organisations who have developed similar digital twins, particularly those in the terrestrial environment. So how we see this working in Smart Sound Plymouth, it's about using that high-speed 5G communications network to integrate an Internet of Things, the sensor array, quite complicated sensor packages around the sound, which will help to feed in what's going on in the real world to help simulate that into the digital environment. And that kind of network will exist with webcams, meteorological stations, AIS vessel tracking, which combined with radar as well, and also the linking in the scientific sensors, wave sensors, tidal gauges, and then even sea temperature, sound velocity, and they will be deployed on buoy systems and other nodes around the sound. And then key, I mentioned it earlier on in the presentation around the ecosystem modelling, and that is a real key point on the digital twin concept. It's about using those models to bring in those live data sets and then being able to simulate that right the way across the environment. So taking those pinpoint measurements dotted around the port of Plymouth Sound, and then utilising that, bringing that within the modelling, and then modelling that whole environment and creating that digital infrastructure. So I just want to highlight a few case studies, a few use cases that we've identified. This is certainly not an exhaustive list, but it's just to give you a flavour of some of the things we've been thinking around. So the first one is about smart ports. It's about border control. It's about how we bring in and out of the UK our cargoes, how they can be individually tracked, each container. They can clear customs through the network, and then as they come, they will be seamlessly interfaced into the terrestrial network for ongoing transportation. The second use case is around a sort of port control, tracking the assets, understanding the movements within the port, being able to manage your assets, so your tug vessels, for example, and not only a digital twin of the natural environment, we're also looking into the digital twin of assets, so a digital twin of your actual vessel that will enable you to monitor the health of that vessel and make sure all the systems on board are running as they should. And also with the 5G communications network, we want to explore the potential of remote bridges, so around your tug vessel, for example, operating remotely, so the skipper, the captain of that vessel, would be sat in a remote bridge in a facility, probably land-based at Ocean's Gate, for example, and be able to operate that tugboat from that location. Another example is sort of a key one that maybe everybody would expect, and that's about autonomy. It's about understanding how autonomous vessels of the future will be able to navigate a port environment to safely bring in those cargoes to port. Obviously in the open sea, there's always risk of collision, but those risks are obviously reduced simply because of the expanse and the lack of traffic out there. But as you come into a port environment, the obstacles and the potential collisions are far greater. So it's about being able to come into port, network onto the existing infrastructure, and then have a much more enhanced view of what's going on, be able to utilize all that sensor network around the sound to take in those data feeds and to be able to navigate safely through that water space. And this is something that we've also explored and talked about with the terrestrial world. It's about proving that technology, allowing us to give credibility to it, and also help the legislators to be able to legislate for that technology and the autonomy as it goes forward. It's about running autonomous platforms in a digital world through various scenarios and understanding how they'll behave and how they'll perform and the decisions that they will make as they go through those various scenarios. And sort of one of the key things that I wanted to sort of talk about as well, we talked about port management, but also about the port management in the sense of the health of the oceans. All our cargo, the oceans are important for food resource and for oxygen that we breathe, and our management of that environment is really key to the ongoing sustainability of it. So it's about understanding the the port, understanding the water quality in the port, and making the port also not only a useful place for commerce, but also for leisure industry and for people enjoying that space. In addition to these use cases, Plymouth also have expertise in cyber security, particularly through the University of Plymouth and their cybership project, and that will be a key player in the 5G and the digital twin work moving forward. What I'd like to do now is really just identify some of the examples of the work that we have been doing on the Smart Sound over the last few years. These examples are really being delivered by Plymouth Marine Laboratory and the core partnership of the MBTC. There's certainly not an exhaustive list of all the things that go on the Smart Sound. We have a whole host of organisations operating on Smart Sound through the FAST cluster, and they're out almost on a daily basis developing and trialling new technologies, and they range from organisations like Thales, Sonodyne, Frugro, Autonaut, to name but a few. So these are just a few examples of the sort of Marine Business Technology Centre's sort of case studies. We've been doing a lot of work with the National Oceanography Centre, for example. There's a large department there that are tasked with the development of new scientific sensor technologies. So that's about taking what is an autonomous platform but making that platform useful, and that's about equipping it with scientific technologies that can then go out and monitor a whole host of scientific parameters. So we help to validate those sensors and to track their performance. We've worked with WIT Energy. We've helped them to validate the performance of the energy harvesting device on our buoy platforms. We do a lot of work with the Met Office. We have a strong collaboration with the Met Office. We've provided the platforms to help them to do comparisons between multiple sensors to assess the sort of sensor performance, and moving on to make sure they're always at the cutting edge of sensor delivery. And combined with that really is some of the work we've been doing with Autonaut, which is about equipping an Autonaut with a standard meteorological office data collecting system, and then monitoring whether or not that is comparable to a more industry standard buoy platform. And that is about then being able to utilize an autonomous vessel to fill in the gaps in maybe the buoy network, but also if a buoy system goes down, it's about the ability to replace that quickly with an autonomous vessel whilst that buoy is being repaired and brought back into the network. One of the trials we've been doing more recently is working with EcoSub Robotics to utilize the underwater autonomous vehicles in a very sophisticated network to develop and deploy over a small grid to be able to collaboratively conduct a very intense survey of that grid. So this included 9-10 of the UAVs in the water at any one time, 3 on the surface, providing a GPS and communications network, allowing the subsurface vehicles to have accurate positioning and communication with each other so that they can, in unison and in complete communication with each other, perform a very, very high resolution grid survey of a smaller area. And I've got a small video that I'm going to play on the next slide, and that's one of the directors of EcoSub, Ian Vincent, and just Ian explaining really how he found the Smart Sound and how we assisted him to conduct these trials.
Smart Sound has really helped us a lot. It's provided us with really ideal vessels in terms of having the Quest available, which is fantastic when we've got 10 AUVs on the deck, having the space to operate, and also a crew that's really well experienced and knows what it's doing has helped out enormously. Access to Explorer, the RIB that Smart Sound provides, again, it's been really handy to do kind of fast response, getting out to vehicles, picking them up out of the water and getting them deployed again. Also the coordination that's gone with it in terms of providing us with support, getting notices to mariners out, providing logistics. The Smart Sound lab has been really useful for doing battery changes at the end of the day. It's just been really good for a trial of this scale. Absolutely invaluable. Really helped us out a lot.
Finally, I just want to bring your attention to a project that PML are leading. This is a national collaboration of partners, but it's about working with the ecosystem models to help to drive autonomous platforms. So it's about taking real-time data from those platforms, synthesizing that into the the models, and then allowing the models to run forward in a predictive sense to highlight areas that may develop into more scientifically interesting areas, frontal zones, spring blooms, chlorophyll blooms, for example. And then it's about the ability to direct those platforms so that they're in the most optimal position at the right time. This is a very successful modelling project. It's showing some real significant progress. We had hoped to have the gliders in the water at this time on the trial and demonstration of how this might work. Obviously, due to the current lockdown situation, that's been delayed. But in the coming months, we will hope to have those gliders operating on the Smart Sound and being driven by the ecosystem models, which is key to reducing that pilotage time and making that observatory, that collection of assets, much more autonomously operating, so that they will be making their own decisions based on the outputs of the ecosystem models within the confines of the missions that they are set. And just to finish, I just want to talk about sort of what's next with Smart Sound. We've talked about a whole host of assets and projects that we're delivering at the moment, and some of them are ongoing and some of them will be delivered in the near future. But our future aspirations are also about replacing our existing vessel with a much more state-of-the-art research and support vessel, much more capable vessel, much more significant lifting capability, but an ability to deploy a whole host of surface and subsurface platforms out at sea with high-speed communications and control, onboard control systems as well. Moving forward, we've talked about the surface vessels that we offer on Smart Sound. We really want to bring in complementary subsurface platforms that we can offer for people to put on equipment to trial and develop in a subsurface platform. And part of that subsurface platform development, we want to be able to put in subsurface positioning and communication systems. So these are the key things that we're now turning our attention to and hoping to procure and fund in the near future. I just want to draw your attention to the fact that Smart Sound does have a website. Please take time to have a look on that website. There's a lot of information on the site, and also the contact details are also on that website. So in conclusion, I just want to summarise the points that I've been talking to you about over the last 30 minutes. So initially we talked about the natural environment. Plymouth has a fantastic natural environment off the shore here. We can facilitate a whole host of validation missions on any kind of marine technologies. We can provide sheltered bays, shallow water environments, right through to more deeper waters, more hostile open water scenarios. And building on the natural environment is the availability of the assets and facilities. I've obviously detailed to you a number of very significant assets, high-speed communication systems, autonomous surface vessels, state-of-the-art buoy platforms, research vessels. But in addition to all of that, there's also the land-based assets, the laboratories, the workshop spaces, Oceans Gate, the marine station and the coast facilities at the University of Plymouth. So very significant offer and multiple platforms that can provide a whole host of validation missions. Building on the assets, building on the natural environment is also the leading academic organisations, individually all very internationally recognised and leading in their own particular departments, but collectively a very significant offer and a very strong offer that comes within Plymouth. And building on the academic organisations is the FAST cluster, access to industry-leading professionals, and there really is a critical mass now within Plymouth of industry-leading partners, all developing state-of-the-art technologies and are there in a collaborative nature, all working hard to really push the boundaries of what we can do in marine innovation. And building on the Plymouth and looking into the regional aspects, we've talked about Maritime UK Southwest and how we play into the significance of that stronger offer across the region. Nationally, we've talked about our links into government, our partner projects that we've been doing with partners across the UK. And then again, internationally, we're now starting to build some strong collaborative partners across the world. We're working very closely now with the Department for International Trade to use their networks and their marketing collateral to build and promote what the offer is of Smart Sound Plymouth. And it just leaves me to thank you for sparing the last sort of 30-40 minutes of your time. I really hope you found it very useful. I've obviously highlighted and presented to you a lot of information. I hope it's been exciting. I hope it's been interesting to you to understand what's going on here. And it really just leaves me to say that whatever you are, whether you're an individual with a very concept idea of a prototype that you might want to bring to market, right through to a big leading international organisation, please get in touch. Give us the opportunity to discuss how we might help you and how we might help you to develop technologies going forward into the future. So thank you very much for listening.